Hi everybody, and welcome to another part of the JavaScript tutorials. In this part we've created a kind of example in JavaScript so that you can integrate all the different concepts you've learned in JavaScript, such as DOM and also local storage, events and event listeners. So here, as you can see, we've got this example of login form again, but this time you can actually log in. However, there is no such database as we know instead of the backend. There is no backend code. Also, we don't have URLs. This is just playing with the DOM and playing with the elements of the document, removing some of them and adding the other ones to the document so that we can better see what's going on. So we've also got the events and events listeners, but for you to better see what's going on here, I'm going to use this login form so I can enter an arbitrary username, and notice that whatever you put as a password, or even if you don't enter any password, it's going to work, and so you don't need to be worried about anything because there is no backend code to check that. Also, a front code can also check that, but the main purpose of creating this example is for you to better see how local storage and DOM can be integrated together so that you can create this kind of example. But I'm going to repeat this, and that is the fact that this is not an example for a real-world application. Do not ever do this, because first of all, the database here should be in the back end, somewhere safer and more secure, rather than just creating that database instead of the local storage, because local storage is limited to 5 megabytes and not so many data can be stored there. And also notice that this is in the browser, not in the server. So it's important to note that and keep that in mind. So once I click on remove user data, this is a kind of an event, unclick event. So I will explain the code, but right over here it will remove the kind of data that we've stored instead of the local storage, and it will reload the login form for us again, so that once we enter some kind of other username or password, we'll submit, and then we'll again be redirected to the same page for the login. Even if I close this browser and run my project with the live server, once again you will be able to see that we are logged in because the local storage has saved the data of that user instead of the browser, right? So right over here, if I click on the remove user data, we'll be redirected to the login form. If I close the browser again, and even if I turn off my computer and again run this code again, I will be able to see that here login form will be shown to me. So here, because there's no data of me instead of this login form example. So now we're gonna get to the code right now and see what has gone on here. So as you can see, we've created some HTML codes. Here we've got all of these necessary part of every example in front end, the head and the char set equals to UTF-8, and all of these different options that you can choose to add or not. Here the title is document. You can add this for right over here. As you can see, the document, the title. And then here we have got the head, the body, and so we've created the div tag for a login. This part is for when we want to log in. We have no data of the user data. And this part, this div logged in, is for when the user is already logged in and the user data is saved inside of the local storage of that browser, right? So we will switch between these two inside of our JavaScript code using DOM, but we're gonna get to that in a bit. So this is the main part of our front-end HTML code, but let's get to the JavaScript code. Here the first thing we need to do is to define a function called hasKey, and this hasKey function will check whether we've got any kind of key with that specific key, and so our specific key here, for example, is Arashtad, which we're going to define that later, but any other kinds of key is gonna check with that specific name and return false if it doesn't have any key, and return true if it has that kind of key instead of the local storage. So it's kind of a Boolean output from this function. We've also got the remove data for when we are logged in and we want to remove all the data from the local storage from this event on click when we are logged in. And what it's going to do is to first of all remove the item that we've already saved. We're going to get to that when we get there. And then it's going to get the body tag and remove the child from this, remove the child logged in. You can also use remove, as simple as that. There is no difference. You can use document.getElement by ID and with the logged in, and then remove this from the body tag. This is just the same as that, and or you can simply write document.getElement by ID logged in.remove. So all of these are possible. And then I've reloaded the location, the browser, so that it gets to the login form. So now imagine that we are inside of the login form and we click on the submit. So what's going to happen is happening right over here. The function login func is going to be activated. So as you can see, we've got the onClick login function for the submitting. So right over here, login func here is, and then the first thing we're going to define is logged in variable, which is set to true because we've logged in, and then the username that we will get from the login form right over here, the username with the ID username, and then we get the values. So we will define an object called person, and then we will set the username right over here, and also is logged in variable. And you can also, for your own test, you can write console.log person. You can also omit that, so it's not useful, so I'm going to omit that. We've also defined a function called set item in ls or local storage. So this is just the same as running the function local storage.set item, and the inputs are key and value. We've also got the get item in local storage or in ls, which we will enter key inside of it. This is the key that we use, and then then we check whether it has a key or not, and if it has a key, it will get the item and also JSON.parse the item, because here we've got an object. If you don't have an object and if you don't stringify that, you don't need to do that. You don't need to parse the JSON, and then it will return false. So that's it. And so here we will set the item in local storage with the Arashtad key and with the data or value of this object that has been stringified using JSON. And then what's going to happen here when the content is loaded? This is the add event listener for the load of content when the DOMs are all loaded. So we've got this as an event listener. Once that happens, we will have this default value of false for logging status. So after that, we're going to check the local storage whether it has a key called Arashtad or not. So if it has this key, it will get to the else, and if it does not have the key, it will set the login status as false, just as it has been defined by default. And then instead of the else, you'll have the item get item in ls, which we have defined a function right over here in order to get the item using the key Arashtad. And then it will JSON.parse the object or the item which we've defined, and then afterwards it will check the login status. So also notice that the login status will also be derived from the item that is logged in, which is one of the items of this object. So because here if we are logged in, because the item is logged in, and because the is logged in is equal to true, then we will be able to see, because this is a Boolean and the output is true, then we will use document.getElementById login.remove. So the login form will be removed, and as a result we will only have the div equals to id logged in right over here. So welcome to Arashtad tutorials, you're logged in, and we've got this button for removing the data from the local storage. So right over here we've also got the other situation where we're not logged in. So if the login status is set to the default, which is false, or we have no key right over here, then what's going to happen is that we're going to remove the logged in div tag, which contains all of these code right over here, and as a result we will only have the login form. So let me run this right over here, run this again. We've actually run this, but we're gonna do this once more, and so as a result we've got this login form. This login form is right over here. Why? Because we have no data in this browser, everything has been removed, and we have no such key as Arashtad, so the login status is false, and as a result when we check this login status, it is false, so we will enter the else, and the logged in part will be removed, so we don't see the welcome to Arashtad tutorials. So once I enter the username and the password and I click submit, then what's going to happen is that instead of our local storage, we will have the data, and because we've clicked on this unclick right over here, the login function will be activated, and once it is activated we will be able to see that the is logged in is true, and as a result right over here, because we've got the DOM contents loaded another time, with the add event listener, we will check the login status, which is true right now, by checking the Arashtad key right over here and item.is logged in, and because the login status will be set to true, then we will enter into this part of the if statement, and we will remove the login form. As a result, we will have this logged in element right over here. So once we click on remove user data, let me get to that here, and we will have this event unclick remove data, and instead of the remove data we will have window.local storage remove item Arashtad. So as you can see, we will have the item removed. And so also what we're going to have here is because we've got the Arashtad removed from the local storage, we have no data, and the logged in will also be false. So we will remove the logged in part, and so as a result, once we reload this page again, the add event listener DOM content loaded will be activated, and as a result of that we will be able to see that we will see the login form. So I hope you've enjoyed this example of our tutorial. Notice that this login form, again, I'm going to repeat that this is not a real world kind of a login form, but this is for practicing all of the concepts of JavaScript instead of this example. And that's it for this part of the tutorial. Hope you've enjoyed it.